Okay, Lavendar, take it away.
Okay, is Sevan, is he on?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and we have your mic open. So, James 7. I'm not quite sure what to call you, but I like James 7. That sounds good. Welcome to the show.
I'm definitely here. It's definitely a pleasure to be on. It's been such a warm reception for the last 48 to 72 hours. I've even been hearing from Starseeds already, so it's really been magnificent. I really want to do something on today's show.
Great. Well, first of all, you're in Costa Rica, so tell us a little bit about your place down there and what you're doing in Costa Rica.
Well, I came to Costa Rica about 5 years ago. I actually wrote the code to the Matrix here. I just was on somewhat of an exodus from the United States situation. And once I finally got here, I really, really felt that I had achieved something in my life, because all my life I had been wondering why I would never travel. I was just so busy in the cities and doing different things, and then I never really got out of the country for any prolonged period of time, or go somewhere where everyone's not speaking your language. And so I came here to Costa Rica 5 years ago and never really looked back, in the sense that it's obviously a massive healing zone and nurture zone if you make it that. And it's just an immense level of flora and fauna and diverse wildlife, a lot of endangered species, so you can just get the drift in a sense of how many different levels of energy are accessible for you to interface with and to share with.
So are you putting together a retreat, or are you putting together a school? What are you doing down there? What is it that our Starseed listeners can help you with?
Well, I mean, what we're doing now is that we've been running, obviously, the Resistance platform and the AstroQuest show live from Costa Rica. We actually just are getting ready to go into season 4, so we're on just a little break. But really, what's been developed here is the strenuous and intense and very meticulous and methodical method of exactly configuring the method or formula of how to activate a human being. And that's obviously something that we've been working with consistently for 5 years now. There is definitely a future plan here soon to open up an institute. Right now, we're really on somewhat of a private level because we've been discovering just so much about each person's individual unique field in how you have to deal with that. So this is just not something you come in and you just have one solution for everyone. Obviously, we're very unique beings. We've been told that. But when you really start studying the human body and what is necessary to allow it to expand, then you really start seeing that there is a great deal of different areas of the mind, body, and soul that have to be looked into by someone who really cares, has a great deal of compassion. And so that's really making it to a level where it's a little bit more complex than just saying, hey, let's just activate someone. Obviously, activated humans in this reality are somewhat of a scarcity, but today we're going to be changing that. This message today is definitely for that special person. And since we're all special, I believe there are individuals on this line that will receive the message and understand exactly what they need to do for themselves now. They can definitely see this as an update, though. Obviously, we are all progressing through a magnificent experience, as we call it, the AstroQuest. And so with that, we've all had different experiences, so we're here to share. Now I can definitely say I'm in every sense a sailor of some of the farthest regions of consciousness in order to bring something back for my beautiful planet and to give it as a gift for the gift that it gave me, which is the nourishment, the maturity, and nature, which has been going on since the beginning of us getting here. If we remember, our real mother, in a sense, is this planet, which actually functions more as an androgen, and it brings life from multiple levels and species, not just humans. And that's just something that we have grown to marvel.
Well, that's
Please
beautifully
give us a
stated,
little
isn't it?
explanation about what you feel the God and Goddess is within all of us, and give us a little description about how you feel that the male and female come together in unison of purpose.
Oh, great question. Well, first I would like to say my terminology, obviously my specialty is really etymology. So I have quite a few things that I've gotten under my belt these days, but etymology is really my first lifeline of getting the real insight to what's taking place on the planet. So what I do personally do, because of understanding the spell or the ritual in itself, is I work with words very carefully, because words are worlds. All you have to do is add an L, which is a God. And what happens then is everything you think of and everything that you say starts to come to pass based on how much energy or current you actually have. So I will say that, just in saying that the role between a man and a woman, if we lay out the body like a universe, which it is, and an innerverse is what we call it. If you talk about man and woman, what you're dealing with is every sense of the globe of the brain and the two hemispheres that are there. And obviously you do need both of those hemispheres in order for one to generate electricity, the other one to generate magnetism. And so with that agreement, which often becomes a pact or marrying, when you marry both sides of your brain with the corpus callosums beginning to light up, then you go into the real connection between man and woman, which is obviously our reality is somewhat inverted or tesseract. So we come out as being separate. However, everyone has a positive and a negative side of their body, or a masculine and feminine side to their body. So we somewhat got caught up a little bit into looking at the external connection between male and female, never to realize at times that our true connection with some type of, as we call the twin flame, happens first within, with the flames that have been explained over thousands of millions of years, parsecs, as far as the depth of its beauty. And meaning that we're talking about energy, we're talking about a real thing. It's vivid. It doesn't leave you having to speculate whether it happened or not. And that's what we had access to. That was our lot. And that is what is attempting to be supplanted from us, or in many cases has been supplanted already, meaning someone is attempting to steal your birthright, to mark you and give you a name and to give you a node. And where we're really at now is that we're everything, all is self. This is the highest maxim. There will be some spaces in which you can see it that are, some people will call really high, and others will say it's actually very neutral. But there's no one really listening, because there's no one outside. And there's nothing separate anymore. And we oscillate between both of those spheres. That's the beauty of the being that we are. We can go into complete nothingness and then come back into full-blown chaos and do all that in one night, and then have, a tea at 8 or 12 in the morning. So what we're really dealing with here now is unlocking this being. Obviously, what's happened is that humanity has come somewhat without a manual. And now it's time to place that manual back into the hand of beings so that they can remember, meaning to put back on members. And that will allow them to get into an entirely different level of this experience, because it's still beautiful. If you see wisdom present anywhere, if you see beauty present anywhere, then you have your allies there, because they can overcome, and they have overcome everything. Likewise, for the ode to those who think the planet's going to be ending anytime soon. The planet's billions of years at least old, and much more if you really understand what you're dealing with. But we'll say billions of years. And because of that means that the planet's always been the adept at longevity. So if we want to get the message from anyone about that, it's probably going to be best to talk to the planet. And so that's really what I bring here today, too, is, what the planet has to say about it and what it shows. The thing about the truth with this planet is you will find it everywhere. You'll find that as above, so below, nature to everything. And that way it doesn't really leave it up to me in a sense. It just leaves it up to me to tell the truth, but it doesn't leave it up to me to convince you of this. You can go and find it anywhere. And if you've had as much time and energy that I've had to look into this, and the massive level of focus and lack of distraction, then you would come to these same conclusions. So what I would say is that what I'm here today to do is what I would do when I read a book that maybe a man spent 40, 50 years of his life to write, is to give you that time or that credit or that particular cycle of energy so that you can restore yourself with it. And that's really called quickening the individual. And so ideas are fuel and energy for us in the kind of individual beings that we are. So today, ideas matched with truth will become the fuel for many people, the actual catalyst that unlocks their perpetual energy.
The quickening, that really goes along with a lot of the things that we've been tracking for some time, because we're finding, especially with when I started discovery of star markings, finding the 25, 26, 27 degree planets, I find that those are places of quickening in a person's natal chart, by transit in the sky. There's certain times that planets will come together in the sky, and they'll hit a certain tone or frequency, and it will quicken those star seeds on the planet, and it'll quicken everyone. But the star seeds, they seem to pick it up and run with it a little quicker than others. I'm finding that there are certain people on the planet that have evolved to such a state that they are what we call light workers, walk-ins, beings that are aboard spaceships that beam down and they walk around the Earth like humans, but yet they're really not. So we find that the timings of these occasions match the 25, 26, 27 degrees of which we call the quickening. So that's really to attune to what you just said.
For sure. I mean, anytime we see the number 26 show up, even 25, these numbers are generally halves of very important numbers like 50. Obviously, 26, we have 26 letters in the English language, 52 weeks in a year, so that gives us a complete anu. So what you have at 26 is you have what's called the gap, meaning that's the actual point where it's really balanced. And balance is something that constantly has to be achieved. That's why we always have to stay active. We have to stay awake. But anyone trying to balance themselves on the tightrope knows that they can't just stop thinking about staying balanced. So that gives you more of an insight of what exactly it is. But the gap in itself is where we have the opportunity to oscillate into an entirely different pole of ourselves, and entirely, in a sense, it is a pole. Like if you look at the Caduceus staff, it's the center column, not so much as the zigzagging that goes on with the two serpents and in them being in the temple, which is how you see the staff itself is coming up to the globe, which is obviously the head. And then you see the whispering, which is basically our own thoughts from our primordial phase, our hereditary connections, our biorhythms continuously giving us an update that it's there, some would say for better or for worse. So it's really about now working on tuning in a lot more, because obviously the ones who are metamorphosizing early, they're like the early fruits and the tints on a tree. It's because they're more susceptible to subtle forces, meaning they're using actually their higher chakra center more. And this actually allows them to get into the ethereal network. So this is how time is read. Let me just explain it, because I was kind of pausing for a minute to just think how I was going to explain this. But it's how time is read. Now, some people can read to you the future, but only so far. And then some can go really far. And what this is governed by is that they have a RAN, or actual vehicle, that they can send into the spaces to where they're moving at such a high vibratory frequency. What is seen there is actually going to take place here after a certain period of time. So this is like the back room to our reality. It's where you see only the geometry that causes things to happen here. So in a sense, that's the actor, and what we have become at times is the reactors. And now I'm going to put people back at the control point. I see sometimes it's the age-old thing. You wake up into a world and you're plunged deep into potential. And then it's time to ignite it. Notice how there's the fuse and then the dynamite. I think people are like the dynamite in a sense. They just need someone to come and give them that brief light so that they can see the direction that they need to go in. And all of this can also be proved on a different level. Like if you want to take it from physics, it's a vortex. And so in the bottom of the vortex, there is a loss of light. Now, the interesting part is that loss of light as we understand light on this planet. But the fact of the matter really is that there's degrees of darkness. Like if there's how it's dark in your bedroom right now when you turn off the lights is totally different than 50,000 miles deep in the ocean. Likewise, it's still different as you go 200,000 feet down, right? So then when you get into those realms of that complete darkness, like if you were going in a cave, This, you actually feel when the deliverer of your program is somewhat shut off. And we're not saying that this program is negative, but I'm saying that one has the ability, when not being exposed by external lights, to tap in internally very fast. It's almost like you actually flip inside out very easy. And that's why most of the glands, such as the melatonin, most of the glands, such as the pineal gland and the hippocampus and the hypothalamus, etc., when there is no light, that's when they begin to develop and begin to produce. So again, understanding how the depth of what someone is really bringing forth is also governed by how deep they've traveled into that space within. And so this is inner space, this is deep travel. We're spreading a web out, though. This is what happens if you fall, as they say. There is a web somewhat underneath you, which is basically created by what we would see as DNA. How DNA keeps eating information, and then it keeps creating this chain. This chain eventually becomes a large web. So you fall somewhat into the information that you can actually start ingesting at that point to become conscious again. And this is why you'll see realities actually separated by the frequencies, and the frequencies containing an extensive level of programming, bandwidth, biorhythm, etc., that allow a person to become somewhat receptive of the reality that they think is real. So when you go into these higher vibratory frequencies and you've cleaned out all of your filters, mind you, because there's obviously the body has organs, so it has filters. Those filters or organs are supposed to play a specific frequency in order to cause a phase locking with galactic core, which is basically how all the suns line up. That's what you're accomplishing when you sit in full lotus or in lotus in the meditation. So that centering of yourself, which is basically like the 2012, whenever you want it to happen, is the 2012 of yourself is accomplished at this point of doing the things that I'm speaking of now. Obviously, there's more depth to this. There's a mental and physical, spiritual body. I tend to like to triangulate these three vehicles because it gives you a better idea of where you are. And what I would definitely say is that what we have to learn to do is make a sober estimate of ourselves of what we are. And so that way we don't imagine that we're more than we may think. And the reason for this is because that's what you have yet to receive. This is like if I go to someone and I say, hey, do you need some food? And then they lie and say, no, I'm not hungry. I just ate, but they didn't really eat. That makes no sense. So this is the level of insanity. If I say there is a vivid power that courses through you that has to be channeled through other individuals. You can't even hold it yourself, or you'll catch Jerusalem syndrome, Kundalini syndrome, Babylonian syndrome, which are stages of what we call insanity. So this kind of energy is so vivid, can connect you from the planet to everything, depending upon your capacity at that point. If I could tell a person today that this is something that can be achieved. This is not, there's no angle to this. I have no motivation. I'm moving on perpetual energy, meaning that I don't send out a frequency that says, I need you to believe me because if you don't, then all this other stuff that's going to happen to me, and then I can't pay for rent and I can't do this. That's the scarcity. And in our tents, now we've gotten very familiar with the scarcity. So now I'm going to really do humanity an extremely big favor in a sense of just introducing the perpetual energy within the body and what it's going to take to get there. What I'll first say is that right now we need to make an astral investment. We need to realize that our whole existence was much more rich when we did more astral and spiritual investing than in physical investing and into cycles and worlds of dense things. And I'll explain why just very briefly but what happens in life is that you'll still see a large amount of currency coming through your hands, especially if you're living in the United States, especially when you calculate that against what people are generally making in the world. But the reality is that if you're not investing in your body, then whatever you've bought or purchased with your current can be taken away from you. But this is like a metaphor I used to think about a long time ago about how these colleges will let you take out, let's say, $200,000-$300,000 in loans so that they can make you a doctor. And how people just never think, oh, look, sometimes you can go right to the control point. If you go get the knowledge, they can't take the knowledge from you. Then you go to another country and you say, hey, I'm a US PhD, and they hire you. And then you see what I mean? It's getting right to the point. You don't even have to worry about the loans. You don't have to worry about anything. You're in another country. And so what happens is with our minds is that we need to figure out what is going to be the straightest path to exactly what we're wanting out of this. But let's not sell ourselves short here, because there's a lot of trinkets that are floating around, relics, I like to call them, and they have the ability, as they always had, to enchant us and to make us look at it and to aspire for it, but then not even understand fully what it is, such as symbols like pyramids, these kind of things that are pentagrams, these kind of things that you can write volumes on if you understood exactly what they were, have this connection to us. And I was talking about this the other day with a good friend of mine. Costa Rica is a very large tourism country, right? And actually most countries do make a great deal of their current by tourism. But notice how what London has done is they've built the Louvre. And then in the Louvre, they put every single artifact and relic that resonates with your ancient biorhythm there. So they actually get more visitors and more money than most countries do for one small building. And then you'll see how, when you understand the laws and the rules and the workings of nature, nature seeks to utilize every single space. Nature is extremely conservative. And we know that we have this planet of life we call Earth. But when we look off of Earth, the next celestial body is the moon. And obviously, if everyone must be living on another half or on another frequency because they're not physically there, right? Then the next one is either Venus or Mars. So these are very far away. So in between is just plasmic field, meaning raw energy. So Earth has seemed to want in the universe to pack everything in a crucible or a bubble, a cross, so they can make it 1,000 times stronger, rather than just letting it out into open space so that it becomes slack. It becomes basically blissed out in fauna, in nirvana, and that there's no real purpose to that existence, which is already created as a sentient being. So what you're dealing with the universe is like ultra sentience. This means that the universe can calculate and think of things so rapidly it escapes time. The universe knows what to think of and not to think of, and guess what? Your universe. So now we have to get into, okay, how do we start to get ourselves back connected? Now, let me explain something to you very briefly about the hive. Now, if I ask very individual sovereigns, I love them, if they are in a hive, they say, no, I'm not a hive mind individual. I do not believe in anything that is projected from the hive. Last time that I checked, especially if you look at every single dictionary, what a hive is identified is basically a group of organisms that all have the same configuration. So bees are in a hive because they all look like bees. Monkeys are in a hive too. Humans are in a hive too. They're in a phi-based hive. We all have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, several organs and several glands that are all the same. So instead of being like cocky and silly and then blow your whole thing, like I was saying earlier, if you don't start checking the ego and then actually saying, look, that couldn't be right, ego, because based on me reverse engineering what you're saying, it doesn't even make any sense. If you're saying we're not in a hive because you're egotistical, then you don't even get that, again, all is self. We are simultaneously connected not only with a phi-based hive, which brings you pentagrams with curves, then we're also simultaneously interchanged with sex 6 or the hex, meaning the actual regeneration principle of any energy dynamo based on 2 collision forces coming together and then birthing whatever comes from their collisions. So we're dealing with major equipment here in a sense. Like some people, they want to put it all in their computer or buy more software or do different things. You are sitting on a bio supercomputer. Now it's powered down. Obviously, there was a war, and there's always after the war. People don't get that. And after the war is the agreements and the treaties that have been made. And if we look at our ancestors, and especially in pagan traditions, and many of what they're calling pagan traditions, and the Magan traditions, which we seem to forget about, you'll see that there was a great deal of pacts, oaths, bindings, and rituals that needed to take place, especially with a certain group of entities. And the reason was because the war had been lost. Our mind had been overcome. We had been drilled. What does this mean? It means as an envelope that is a bubble, which is Sophia, if something penetrates it, it's no longer a human or hymen, Hymen. Hymen is broken, meaning that there has been an intrusion, which is basically a fertilization. Some will call it an invasion into our reality from cosmic entities that are seeding in straight lines. That's why they move as rays. Spirits move on straight lines, like ley lines are traveled by spirits. Ley lines are when the human comes out of the body and travels the path that every other spirit has been traveling, because that is known to be the best path to go. But I tell you, today we're going to have to learn to cut a new path. What has been designed here has a certain capacity. The beginning of it is in the cabal or in the cable. The first letter is a branding, an ox. It comes to us as an A. So when the A comes, it is a square and a compass. It's used to, what they say, square a circle. So this is the branding. When the language is introduced, notice how some of the malevolent forces, which love to masquerade around as God dogs, but they have issued an edict decree to confuse us with language. And God said they are building a tower. What is that? That's the Jed. That's your body. That's the activation. That's the lining up of your chakras. If they keep doing this, there's going to be nothing that we can do to control them. There's going to be nothing that we can do to keep them from going beyond. Let us go down and confuse them. This comes from the same archonic entity, Yaldabaoth, who we've been chasing around the damn galaxy from infesting these kind of worlds like this is some kind of Stargate role-playing game. Meaning that the same consciousness that is infecting us here actually is affecting other entities that have moved into that rhombus, or basically it's in every tense a diamond that attracts. Okay, diamond shiny, diamond attracts. Now, reincarnation takes place as such. As you are a globulous entity, minusculely small, basically the weight of what measure a body in losing when it dies, what happens is that you come out and then you see all these lights, and then the insect side of you goes into the light. And that light that you're attracted to is based on the frequency in which you left off last. You then incarnate. Now, on incarnation, what happens is you have this is very trafficked. This world has at least been here, a barge floating around for billions of years. So what you have then is you have maritime law on land. Meaning that you had sea beings which don't live on land. They don't drink our water. You see what I mean? There's a different entity or specimen, in a sense, here that has elected a group of men and women in different societies, mainly secrets, meaning you still don't know about them, to keep the reincarnation processes going, calculate the cycles on 72s, keep this under control, because you are from the sea. That's why I say it's a sea man. And you are a seed. You are an exact copy, in a sense, of wherever you came from. Look at a seed. The seed is in itself a tree. Right? So what they say in the hologram contains the same part of the whole. So understand what is being said. When you are a seed, you contain all the parts of the whole you're from. But what if you're a magnetar? What if you are such an immensely powerful galactic being that you even activating here would blow the bubble of the planet? Because we're in the bubble. So this is why there's such a problem with when, how, and where this information is going to be released to humanity. And that's why it was picked as this time to release it to humanity, because it needed to be something that we had to do. We need to have a purpose, because this kind of energy laying around with leads to stinking thinking. It's like when you understand that you can literally do anything, if you don't have nothing to do, then somehow something's happened wrong. Because how we are designed is we are designed to first project like a UFO. You need to know where you're going to go first. And then all the calculations are made of the fuel and things that you need. Then we make the travel with the map. We've gotten into traveling in through space, half sleep, on a spaceship that's crashed, missing important tools that you can't even get from this constellation that you're from, in a sense, unless you understand how to tap into other frequencies. And meanwhile, again, you have individuals on this planet that know all of this, what I'm telling you today. They have set themselves up in respite as enemies to human beings. The decree went out that if humanity does not respect itself, then we do not have to respect it. So this is something that in a sense we're doing. We're the ones driving the trucks. We're the ones planting things. We're the ones with the guns in our hands. We're the ones doing it. It's not the controller. That's when you let your control go, is when you blame it on someone else and say they're doing it. So sovereign, that's not how even a mother acts with a baby. The mother, when having the baby in her natural instinct, she can't be told, well, maybe. Maybe is not a word in her language. That's why when you go to the ancient language, there's no maybes there. We need to either know, are you going or not? Yes or no? Because the maybe equals what we call time. So here we are, we find ourselves in time. And now we need to get these basic principles about soul growth. So I want people to understand still that the overall frequency of the dimension, due to encouragement, obviously, there are many things that you can watch on TV that suggest what you should do. There are diets that you've picked up that suggest what you should eat. All of that has been brought to you on your chair. That's why most things are designed now for you to not have to work much at all. Because if you're not moving fast, if you're not bringing up the oxygen level in your blood, then you can't tap into full spin. You can imagine full spin and what full spin would be like. Then you can use your mental body, which Pythagoreans and Socratic people like to use a lot, but then find that the mental body is just not moldable with the three-dimensional reality because it's a different geometry. Meaning that many people that conceive great things still have a problem figuring out how to do it here. So we want to teach the knowledge also about what is the realm dynamics. Meaning, how do I get something from 3-dimension to affect 6th and 7th dimension in understanding what's there and what the principles that exist there. And the thing is, first, to look at the body as the map. Tell you what, you actually didn't leave yourself without a lifeline here. This is the most greatest thing. You would have never left yourself. So what you've been given is the map. It is you. Now the map's turned inside out. So what happens is if you're not looking within, then you won't even notice it. If you look in their mirrors and you think who you're seeing in the mirror is you, oh my, Narcissus. What happens here is that, let me tell you something. With a third eye open, if I look at any of you on this line right now, you do not look like you look right now. So thus you're living in deception. So if you start looking in the mirror and believing that you're that, then you start being deception. You have certain attachments, different kind of things, a whole spectrum that would get me more associated with who you really are. Obviously, I can reach that only when I can see that version of you. And in order for me to do that, meaning to see you as magnificent, not as 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 head, to see you as magnificent, I need to go into the frequency and see from that eye. Now, people say, well, what is frequency? Frequency, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the chakra centers, the organs which are developed over our lifetime. First chakra, the root chakra, our base, our foundation, what we're standing on, that pillar, black pillar at times. They seem to want to march around that more than anything out in the east. But that black base Saturnalian pillar is now the foundation that most people are standing on because the induction and the occultation that has taken place with individuals such as Disney, and all the rest of the individuals that have been feeding those minds in the younger minds, their mental mind control and mandalas and frequencies that connect to their spheres, the spheres of the immortal Charlemagne. Meaning that there were God men already here that understood how to create worlds in their minds and to plunge you into those worlds. You can even go into the East, and there are individuals who can do this now without you having any kind of abilities. And obviously you're at an extreme disadvantage. Meaning that what can be done here is limitless. So you would be amazed at what some people can do when they didn't set any limits. Now, obviously, we're raised still, though, in the binding oath pact ritual, which is the religion. The religion comes fully replete with mental and spiritual trap. Then what it does from there is it continues to extract. The communion or the Eucharist is made, meaning that you sup with them, meaning you sit with vampires. You sit with energies that actually pull energy rather than give energy. They've already been dubbed non-symbiotic. there were books that told us about this, and they made sure they kept the last ones in the Vatican and burned the rest of them up in Alexandria as Ptolemy collected the rest of the works. Meaning that Ptolemy issued an Vatican decree that created the Alexandrian library, that all doctrines and scriptures, any kind of holy books, especially if having any kind of weird powers associated with them, would be the individual bringing that original would be highly compensated. So that's how greed, in a sense, that can infect even the most noble gas. Meaning that noble gas is not using any dense forms. This means when you operate on higher frequency, you're like the Prius of this thing. You can take a minuscule amount of energy and blow. You don't need all types of other life forms giving you kudos and gladness, basically their energy that you have to run and pay back later on. Meaning that the God complex exists as such. It's a simple system and simple program. Once individuals get involved in sending their energy into one focal point, if that focal point doesn't in turn send that energy back, it becomes a cesspool. Bacteria begin to accumulate. So this is the state of the gods. That's why I like to relate them with Bacchus. But there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. I'm not here to tell people today that all of what they believe in is here to destroy them. What I'm saying is that actually made you who you are. Now, you're so dynamic, you just need to actually get hold of that. And that's what they call riding the beast. The beast is the body, by the way. They love to play around with it. But the beast itself has been fed by you, meaning that you've taken care of the animals in your body. Now, this is the other thing, the animal body. See, there was the pacts and the oaths and the rituals in order to get into 3D is actually to get the appendages, because other than that, we're just orbs. Some people like to take pictures of them. So we fly around in these orbs all day, and then when we decide when we want to go into 3D, then we need a body for 3D. But none of this stuff just comes like, oh, I want a body. There are the animals who also correspond to the archons or the arc forms that have lent us, in a sense, their DNA or their particular construct of flesh, which is known as the Cain or the canine, the Canaan ball, meaning the flesh as God. When we inherit the flesh, we take on the flesh. We also take on the contract. And that's what I was saying about these bodies, because they're 5-base bodies, that means that they're pentagrams. But wasn't last time you checked in any magical book, they had the pentagram there as far as some kind of contract? So when you understand the contract and the oath of what is taking place when we take the physical body, when we say, yes, I'll go in, then you understand how God, which is a Germanic god Gud, is a banker, meaning that it's a banker of galactic currency. It will take you, if you're a bum and then in the galaxy, meaning you squander all of your currency and then don't have any more, it's a hotel that'll say, hey, you can come stay here. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money, but you're going to actually reincarnate on the actual current level that you have. And on top of that, there's clauses and addendums here, meaning that you can actually emancipate yourself fully and become a soul sovereign. Although that's not really in the odds of anyone, but hey, what do you got to lose? Meaning that when they show you the life before you get here, the one that you forget when you're born or you hit the birth or the bay, as a doc comes in and gets ready to cut the cord, and then that brings you into a reality where they give you a certificate for your vessel, your Argo cargo, and then they tell you what your name is going to be, and which is what they insisted to your parents on the astral level. Then you get a code and a vibration that you don't understand, and other people are calling you that, bouncing that off of you. Basically, you sign up for 360 cycles. 360 cycles are 72 increments of reincarnations. This means lives of getting to an average of the age 72, but the problem with this is it's 360, not one. Immortality, meaning that getting to the point where you don't die. Here's a secret. You'll read it in some of these books that cost like $40,000. No one has obtained enlightenment that actually dies. That is the whole reason of obtaining enlightenment. So this means that if you actually die, that means that you didn't get it. So for everyone waiting for themselves to die before they actually figure this out, not a good time. Generally, you cannot overwhelm the bliss. This is another state, meaning that you actually are witnessing the bliss and gazing in the bliss, even actually siphoning the energy off the bliss, but not going into the bliss. This is what a Time Lord knows about. meaning how not to go into the reincarnation portal, but rather stand outside of it and look in. That means the one who's poking his head into the world, but actually still in another world. You see? So I love what we've been having going on Earth, but to me it's a little evil, meaning that there's this thing about this monkey's paw. If you get one thing, it takes something from another person. So this teeter-totter keeps us constantly oscillating between two poles that are long burned out, meaning that the being that we are is not used to conflict and separation and division, deuce, dios, and the rest of the club, dice. We're not used to this kind of separation because we are communal beings. We need to fuel ourselves based on the unique essence that comes off of us, not computers, not other things that are inorganic to us, meaning that they are foreign to our bodies. Because if you think about it, plastic is not inorganic. It's made from something here. Everything here is organic, duh. But it's dead. There was a doubly dead, meaning it's on such a low frequency, but still everything will remain immortal, but on a low frequency to the point where it keeps us on a low frequency. It's become our current. You match the current in the world to the first letter of the alphabet, you see the ox head. The ox was the first currency of the world. How many oxes you had determined how many wives and palaces you had. And then it moved itself all the way through the noble gases and all the rest of the metals. Actually, it didn't even get to the gases, It went right into the metals, the gold, the silver, the golden rule. And then it moved itself into industry. Then it moved itself finally into paper, allowing us to cut off our communication system, meaning the trees that are holding all the knowledge. They hold all the knowledge, not just because it's Harry Potter, sillies. It's because if you go and take a tree into a laboratory and you see how many elements are actually in there, you have the alchemical cabinet. So that's why they were always synonymous with knowledge. But when we are encouraged to trade on our allies, and then we start to use the currency that is made of paper, then what we have done is we've taken the talisman. And I'm going to still tell people how to get out of all this, by the way, but I got to let you know how wired down it is. An ode to what a piece of paper can do. Meaning that I've seen little pieces of paper with weird squiggly writing on it do amazing things when you put them underneath the mattress. It begs you to not want to do it again until you understand what was that. Meaning that there is something about when you take certain things that have a two-dimensional imprint that resonate across the galaxy where certain things are vibrating that tone, even right now, and you intone it somehow. Okay, so what we've got to get into now is we got to get into how we are going to pull apart this binding or oath that's done through the currency, which is a talisman. Look at it. All currency of the world lines itself in geometry and all sorts of stuff. You just know it's a talisman. Just put it like that. So what happens is we went to paper. Now the next oath pack ritual is with plastic. Such a dense, very, very senseless neighbor to be kind of hanging around, meaning that when they turn the paper to plastic, sir, you want paper or plastic? Ma'am, you want to put your money in the bank? Here's your card. It's plastic. Then the currency that moves through the entire frequency, the system, which is of course based on oil, becomes the blood of our organic mother that we start drinking. You see what I mean? So there's another side to this where obviously you can go into the superfuels, meaning that you actually learn that all this that we're seeing in reality has a more purified form. That's why as anything draws closer to the sun, it goes into a level of purification. This is also why when you draw deeply within, because you have an internal sun, that's the one I love to talk about more, but it purifies you, meaning that it blows off all the bull crap. And then what's left is you're standing in front of the sun, ready to merge with it and become father. Remember, it's still just a sun. So what happens is, father and mother, you actually are, if there's anything left, that's what happens during the reincarnation. All the impurities are the things that you've actually collected from the third dimension, which don't really exist in the higher dimension, are melted off. This again is given to you inverted in the trials of Inanna, and where she goes through the dethroning process, where they're taking off her jewels and her diadems, and then you would still have to ask in the end, are you not still magnificent? If you take away a person's external things and they no longer feel magnificent, that means they only felt magnificent because of their external things. That's the key to the riddle. When you are completely stripped and there's nothing left, what is there? And that's what we want to grow. The goal here was to be able to project our magnetic body, our aura, beyond our body. So I'll say that again. The goal here was that you needed to grow an aura bigger than your body. But the body is a pin, so you have to break out of it. That's the key to the pentagram, or serpent, the oldest one that's been down here, basically. And so when we take the dynamics of understanding how to open up the pentagram, or basically get yourself out of phi-based implosion systems, then we open up to greater worlds. But the human being, just so I can clarify, is magnificent, meaning this vehicle is magnificent. It can do great things. But what happens is if you can't get out of it, it becomes a prison if it starts to break down. And many people feel that at times when they get sick. They're like, man, I'm not the body, but today I'm really, really getting it. And it's because you are the body, mind, and soul. You've made agreements. You have to hold all of them up. So imagine, that's why most of your conscious time was spent with you balancing your vehicles. It's almost like you're tending that little bonsai tree, not working in some cubicle somewhere with them blasting, rock music out and all the rest of what's going on. Not saying there's anything wrong with rock music, but also not saying there's anything right about it. See, what happens here is that we move beyond, like you have to say solved to the earth, meaning that you come, teacher, solved it. I got it. Duality. It's the pentagram. It's compression. It's combustions. It's phi. It's fire versus a wood versus water versus, this Pokemon game here. And then step into the higher fields for a moment. Then understand those two interlacing triangles being man and female. Then the hexagram, there's 6. 5 and 6 together make 11. This is, again, dualistic binary worlds. And then step into, not trying to quote the numbers here, but as it's marked here on the dimension, the septagram or the heptagram is actually the calculation of heavens. That's why there's 7 colors that come in through the spectrum. So that's the geometry and the math that is used to scale the stars in a sense. And so, not the pentagram. The pentagram is the geometry used to scale 3 dimension. So this is where it does become very important for you to understand certain things. Not so that you can go and become lorded over by it, but that way you can surpass it. See, I don't want people to feel like today that I'm giving you a system that you can go by and now you can go and pick up the pentagram and now you can go pick up the hexagram. I'm telling you there's a place beyond geometry. I've seen it and returned from it. It's very odd. We want to increase the probability of it not being so odd. What happens? Well, basically, it's like letting off a nuclear bomb inside of yourself. You just called the Supreme Being, not God. See, so the Supreme Being, which is basically everything, ignited inside, is basically letting off a bomb inside of yourself. Now, you're serious, so you need to know what we're talking about here. There are certain words that lead to this. There are certain codes that lead to this. And what happens is that when a person unlocks this version of Supreme Being for themselves, because obviously Supreme Being can't be contained in the physical reality, it has a tendency to slip chakras. Chakras break down. This is the birth of the black star. What happens here then is that the Kundalini, which is normally supposed to make its steady rise back to the throne where it fell from, great angel Michael, battling with the dragon, this is your consciousness, where the higher mind is attempting to stay on the throne while the lower mind or the lower third chakra sixth chakra gonad Muladhara chakra gonad is telling you need to come into this heat. The sex is on fire, as they say. So what happens is that this is the battle of our consciousness. This is the battlefield of Aranja. Behold, the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gitas were right, but they're not books and just stories. They are manuals for where we're living, but also highly altered themselves to leave you away from the point. What is the point? Kundalini. Kundalini was the last thing I ever seen that knocked these kind of goons that we have on our back right now clean out, so that way they can go and bathe themselves in purification once more and give it another shot. But trying to do this with rudimentary tools is like, notice how it's almost in a sense like you coming up with caveman tools to handle an astral situation. If you're coming out with stones, they better be crystals in order to deal with this kind of situation. You have to go to the control point, not be trying to get it from here. You don't need to occupy anything but yourself. So what we're talking about here is talking about a new dynamic. We're talking about you now becoming the lead actor in the story, not a reactor. You're not watching TV, waiting for them to do something so you can react to it. You're actually doing something that actually causes others to react to it. Why do you want to do this? Because you become the light for them for that moment. When you shine out your light to others, they become receptors. They are in vacuums and they can't even see. I have talked to individuals and been in the room with individuals that were in this space. Like, I can't see anything, and they can't actually get back to this dimension. And I get those out too. But anyway, it's a deeper thing. So why can't they see? Because they've gotten vacuumed deeper into the vortex. So physically, they can't even see anymore. This is why there are also people around you now that you cannot see. To you, they would be invisible, but they are actually moving around the environment now. And this is not a state of paranoia. It is telling you that high spin was accomplished. What is high spin? High spin is when you take your auric field into a higher frequency, you actually disappear. You disappear. You become biolocal. And you disappear not in the sense that you're not there. You disappear in the sense that nobody can see you. So let me show you how this works. You can walk right through the supermarket. And as long as you don't look into anyone's eyes, which is the gateway to their soul, which causes phase lock, no one can see you. Because you're actually on such a different frequency than they're on. It's almost like in their mind, you know how you just ignore somebody? They're ignoring you. You see what I mean? So this is how all of what I'll tell you, the most beautiful thing, first of all, I'm not talking about throwing lightning from the hands, even though that's possible. Dynamo Jack already showed you. What I'm saying is that still realize that the greatest gift that we were ever had, the magnificence of our beings, was just creating children. And we do that easily. So you need to start understanding that these powers that people keep talking about, which are more becoming like comic book powers, you already have now. To taste, sight, hear, smell, touch the right things gets you into a whole level of expansion of what's really actually happening here for you. So this is the thing I'm talking about. I maybe want to take a moment, hear from Lavender, hear from Ariel, see what they think. And of course, there's tons more here that I have to go through. Actually, I just went through that without my notes, so I haven't adhered to my notes much. But the reality is that I'm here for you. It's really just based on your question now. Like if you're standing in front of someone that can give you 1 billion or 20 billion years of information, which has a great deal of worth on the galactic current level, you still have to realize that I could not tell you it in 1 hour. So you need to time jump in a certain sense. You need to step in the time machine and get to only the questions that are imperative to ask. And we'll see if I get stumped. But it hasn't happened yet. Because why? And I'll tell people this. This is why it hasn't happened. Because I'm in this to accomplish it. It's about me. It still is about me. I want to do something and I don't want to kid myself. I want to know what happens when I die. I want to know if someone is in control of me. How is that so? How is that possible? I want to know the unbegotten, meaning that's where the knowledge here cuts off. People think everything comes from something. Everything has to come from something. Makes no sense, though. Where did the first thing come from? Who created it? So this is where we are locked out in our knowledge in a phi-based vehicle. There's a space where the answer to that becomes readily available, just not in English. And so that's what I bring to you. I bring to you, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, elders, the great arcanum itself. And now it's still one of those things, though, is that you can have a book about it, which I'm writing, but it's still based on you because you see in the book what you want to see. And that's the key to any real masterpiece. You see what you need to see. So now it's time for us to, again, clean the filters, clean the organs, which we can talk about later in the conversation about when we're talking about solutions. But we need to now see that, look, you need to be able to project your auric field over individuals who are suffering. Like there are individuals in this world that they came in on a low rank incarnation. They'll actually be animals next. When there's not enough soul force to actually create a human being, which is quite a bit. It costs quite a bit to be a human being still. People, you should just see that as your troubles here sometimes. That's your current or your energy being burned. But when you go into another body, which is offered to you at times, if you can't make it as a level 9 human, maybe you should make it as a level 1 dog. Look how it works with incarnations. You can go into an incarnation and look at, okay, either am I going to do a low-level human incarnation or a high-level animal incarnation. High-level animal incarnation will equal you actually having people that take care of you, food that's fed to you, which may be different in a low-level human incarnation because you don't have enough spend or to spend. Not enough galactic currency because you've been earning too much 3D currency and haven't understood how to convert it. You convert your money by making it submit to you. It's just a tool, loot, L-O-O-T, T-O-O-L. It has to submit to the divine principle. What the divine principle is it must be planted. No seeds are not good just on the shelf. Meaning what we do with our currency, and this is how they get it. This is the dirty game. Because you'll notice all the currency always finds itself into the hands of individuals doing very large transactions and drug deals for weapons and guns. You can still pick that up off the DNA when you touch one if you're sensitive. Meaning when I touch a dollar bill, a node pops in my head. And all of what's been done with that currency, I just inherit. So if I'm not a son, I can't burn up that impurity. And then I gain, when I spend it, because it's in my hands now, the good's committed to my charge. I actually, notice the word charge, I actually go and I spend it on something. And if that happens to still connect into something that is connected to negativity and darkness and ignorance, then that is what I inherited. You reap what you sow. So that's why I was saying about this. Like after a while, when I was sitting here on the planet, I was like, man, it's a conundrum. And then that higher self or the oversoul, which needs to install itself into everyone, meaning it's you, in the higher state of yourself back on the throne, not thrown down into the coccyx of your spine underneath fear and the shells of all of the realities that you've been going through. Notice the shell is phi, right? And then the shell protects, but it also traps. Same thing with a pentagram. See, the reality still protects us from what we can't handle, but still understand what you can't handle is yourself, all itself. Meaning that at times we see things in the galactic plane and it's strictly based on whatever chakra we're looking from. So if you're looking from the netherworld, which is below the waist and in those chakras, because the energy has been sent down, gravity tends to help that, by the way. Then you're seeing from your knees and in the netherworld. Then you're wondering why you're seeing this dark shadow. That can be seen in a higher light. And this is also why everyone has at times a different perception of what exactly they saw. But now we need to realize that you just saw yourself. If you keep making these, you keep marking them and giving them names and categorizing them, we only set more stumbling blocks in front of ourselves. If Sparrow deified himself, that automatically tells you the dimension is going down if it's not changed. Meaning that there is no one here, as the Gnostic Sophia said when Yalda Baal said, I am God. Sophia said, no, you're not. You are not the supreme being. We all are. There's a slight difference. But when one storms out and Cain wanders away and then he becomes the king, then he mints the first coin, and then he comes with the two-face, because every coin has two sides. It becomes respite to us. Meaning that if there is one just avowed against our physical existence until that one is completely converted, like I said, Jesus needs to be converted. The new idea that people have of spiritual leaders needs to be converted. So who are we? Converters, capacitors, resistors, generators. We make up the dynamo of the machine known as a real body. Or corpus is more like it. The corpus hermeticum, to be exact. That when they say a corporation, it's designed after the body. It has the building. They form it as an entity. They give it a skeleton, even little organisms working inside, spine like an elevator, phones like ears, TVs like eyes. See, so all they've really done in the reality is unpack our four-dimensional world in front of us and let us gaze into it and be amazed in ourselves, but now not in the same form that we used to be. Meaning that when we have mutilated, mutilation is only not realizing you're everything. When we have separated, then we've lost compassion, which is the compass to Zion. You cannot navigate this field. So also what happens is that there's a backup plan always. So you get these bright lights. They come in and they shine deep into the vortex because that's recycling. That's why recycling is the Star of David. You take otherwise dead cells in a battery and then give them an opportunity to regenerate themselves for another incarnation. That's what the sun is doing. It's spraying these seeds through the envelope, and as you break through the fields and you're added rather than taken away and given the body that corresponds to the envelopes, as you say, envelope, regalia, all of what you're wearing now, that is your inheritance then when you come through such transformational systems. So you can see Earth still got the light on. And that's why there's still birthing going on here. What you'll see when you understand the pyramid and what it's about, you'll see there's one on the bottom, and that makes a rhombus. Okay? And then you'll see this continuously, and that's obviously the straight line one, which generally shouldn't be in spheric worlds. So then you round the corners, and then you come up with that logarithmic spiral, which is actually the process of, in itself, seeding worlds. And now what we have to do is realize that that little apex point, as they call it, it's right when it's the center of the hourglass. We got it as the gap earlier. That needs to be unclogged. That's what our mission is here. For those who want to take that mission, there's several more. But that gap needs to open in this way. You don't have a lockup in communication, meaning that when people say, I don't know where my mother is when she's dead now, I don't hear from her, I used to dream about her. It's because we are turning off the frequencies that connect to the biorhythm, which is like the allspark. It is our ancestral connection, and we are letting Scythians, Saturnalians who carry the scythe in their hand, cut our cord imaginarily. Because trust me, if your cord was really cut, you're lifeless for real. They can't cut your cord. But notice how in the Curlian camera, you chop someone's arm off, or actually if a person had their arm chopped off before, they go in the Curlian camera, the arm is still there. Meaning the astral body is still intact. So trust me, in this looking glass, which is weird as hell, things can happen to you here that are not even really happening to you. You just think they are. And that's why I said, if you see wisdom and beauty present, focus in on that. Then you will meet yourself, meaning that you will regain that connection. Because remember what the shaman said, the ones who have the third eye ability installed, functioning. When they see a being coming from the Western culture, the connection that's generally coming from their tail, or coccyx, tail meaning your story, the other vertebrae, you don't just have 33. 33 never made a whole of anything. So the rest of your tail, which was domesticated out, that's what still was connecting you right into the earth. And then the shaman says, this is strange. The tail, or the connection to the umbilical cord of the mother is cut. How could this happen? So even in their knowledge and system, such things is like, who would ever do this? But when you tune into the great one holding the flame, the big corp America, you'll find that there has been they've been engaging in a certain type of ritual that severs the child from its parent. So this we need to realize that some people are under mental war. Some are under physical. Some are under spiritual. Okay? And some are getting them all. In the United States, it's a heavy spiritual and mental war and a physical war. The United States is the universal spirit. You keep reading these annuals about these men that are running around talking about Übermensch, meaning to overcome a superhuman, but still meaning super slave, meaning that activate an individual's full potential, but still control them through the sigil. See, this is what we have to be careful, because otherwise the most powerful galactic being becomes Earth's enemy. And so many are being lost like this. I see that when a man glances at a woman and how she may carry on the TV and in media, and because of the abuse she's been through, and imagines that woman being feminine is connected to the Earth's feminine, which she is, but it's not completely. Meaning that the Earth's feminine doesn't just birth humans. It births animals, insects, trees. It is androgynous. It is not just a female. It is not polarized. That you cannot create anything polarized. That's why you can't be mad and can't be upset. And you even can't even be too happy. You have to be in action. And so it's a big thing, but it can become infinitesimally small to the one who eats it. The number is 8. EIGHTATE. Meaning that if you can stomach this and actually allow it to build your form rather than tear it down, then you understand the real state of as above, so below, meaning what you put in your mouth goes into your lower body. So as above, so below, the decisions that is made in your mind and in your head affect everything. And we have to remember that we told these beings that we made an agreement with, which is our arm, leg, leg. Okay? Arm, leg, leg, arm. That is the animal body. The Taurus is the torso. Ram on the Mars. Serpents and dogs on the feet. In duality, one walking before the other. You see? So we made an agreement with them that we would show them out of this. Not eat them. Who are they? They're us, but now back in the little bodies, back in the other geometry that's not perfect. That's when you look at the dog, look up at the dog just wants to say something. You're like, man, why don't you just say what you're about to say? Because you are bombarding me from your frontal lobe right now. And the dog is like, man, I'm you, stupid. Let me out. Give me some distilled water. Like the reality is that we are looking at, but notice how Cain and Ball. It's a hard game. They love to play it with they see the soccer's got the hexagon and the hexagon and the pentagon on the ball. It means that we are taught to consume ourselves, old Ouroboros. The serpent on a tree, you can eat yourself and live. That's vampiric. If you consume yourself, you can never become anything greater than what you consume. You are what you eat, or ate, I would say. So right. Past tense. Let
me ask you, James, if we can, because I'm kind of making sure that we have a time for a few questions from our
let's
callers.
do that. I was hoping I could get off this nice streak that we're on for a moment and just leave it there. Perfect, because I tell you one thing about your station, the channel is completely open, meaning that I don't need to channel anything but the straight pipeline. And then it's always when there are other individuals that need to receive that. So honestly, I've said what I need to say. So let's definitely get into some questions, because I'm sure there's a lot for people to rewind on this conversation and be like, okay, that has 3 different meanings to it.
Right.
Well, I have something I want to ask you. Do you sleep at night?
Well, I have a 10-month-old daughter, so that may be
It's like your mind and I was tracking everything you were saying. It's like, wow, you're so hooked up to so much universal truth that it's like I was seeing you go aboard ships. I was seeing you travel the universe at night. It's like, oh my goodness, I wonder if his body sleeps. You know, that was just a
that's the truth, though. I mean, what happened was that I did actually, in this whole process through the trials, if you take in too much, they call it the Ming energy, which is the ability to tap into these fields as subtle information. And if you don't get enough of the physicality and it tends to ground you, which is obviously the connection with our planet, you tend to not be able to sleep. Sleep is obviously another door for me into another world, but the reality is you don't even become conscious there or lucid there if you don't have some level of a great deal of balance, like riding a wave. And I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, I know how to shut it off. That's the other thing. It's
I'm just kind of kidding you a little bit because you're so immense and you're so right on about everything.
Thank you.
So I now turn it back over to you, Ariel.
Okay. Just if you could briefly, I heard you talking about something on another show, and I just loved it when you were talking about what happened to God's wife, and you were making analogies with the masculine and feminine. And this is something that we really talk about a lot on this show, is the return of the feminine and the whole concept of the fertility and the abundance as opposed to the scarcity. And I just loved what you had to say about that. So if you could just talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll get to our callers with questions.
For sure. I mean, I love that. I love the title, God's Wife. What we're dealing with here is that, again, there obviously is a conspiracy going on to keep us polarized. So whether it's the woman, which is generally the primary focus, because obviously we're dealing with Jesuits. How much can I really talk about this in a short period? But we're dealing with Jesuits, so they're avowed against woman, and it's because they want to be a woman. That's why they have skirts and the dresses, and all the garb of the priesthood is always wearing dresses, etc. And it's because they want to take over the role of the divine feminine, but they're still surrogates. They're Mother Circe in a tense. So it's basically they put strong beings to sleep on the steps of their churches. So what we're talking about is that the connection between the masculine and the feminine is two things. First, the male connects himself with the earth. This is when he understands the power of his semen, and he understands how to cycle it properly through his system, then it's not going out externally, but rather becoming the homunculus, which is the golden lotus. It's an inception rather than a conception. So this is man's activation. Then when woman activates, meaning that she actually tunes into the grid, she reactivates the organic grid, which is connected to her womb. When she does that, then she happens to come together with the gentleman who's already accomplished that same thing on his sphere. Wow. Now, I will tell you, some people can do this within. So it is not always an external thing, but if there is a mission, and there are two that have already traveled together, meaning that you always see, if you start looking into the astral eye, for lack of terms, you see man and woman sitting there together in whatever condition they may be in. And it's because this particular connection in itself comes based on the geometry of this vehicle and its story. Because its story was, it fits in, they're like puzzle pieces of geometry. They need to be fit into each other. So there must be some level of communion or that goes on, or communication in a tense, in order to bring the next level about. And that's why each card, as you see in the tarot or Sator Rotus, meaning rotate or a motor, it is a wheel. You'll see that each card actually connects into the next card. So there's an ongoing story. And so what man and female and when woman returns is when she understands her connection to this planet truly. And obviously that for us, I love to talk about this subject in particular, because for the man, it gets a little bit different with the holding the semen. But for woman, in her tense, she can look within and tap into it so much faster than what a man can generally do in this world, because his misconception of seeing woman as the planet. So this is how we're in a tense used against each other. Then you'll see the connection with Smurfette, or the only female Smurf. It's talking about that all women come from the same source. And it's because the ones who are polarized into the feminine are more connected with the same source, the source that we're calling all itself, because it's a womb thing. You just dive through wombs continuously, right? Why male has taken an extrovert role, explorer. This is what you would see when you see the man leaving the dock and he's waving to the women while he's on the ship. Don't worry, we're going to go find a new place because we're going to grow, and then we're going to need a place to stay then. You see what I mean? That's that logic side of
Right.
things, right? Which is, in a sense, not always useful. And that's why I say with all this stuff, there's no positive and negative to it. That's when you understand how to come off of the tree, or in this sense, the Caudacea staff, with the black or the white snake in any kind of polarities is what it's saying. Because then you can be this person that is high rank seraphim, white as snow, and blind the hell out of everyone with it. While you can be this dark black inverted star as below resonator called an actor on TV, infecting billions of people with your projection, and in a tense still be on the same balance. You see? And so that's why sometimes when we desire to be good in a tense, from what we understand it, what we should say is balance. What was this rod for? If you had one wish, what should it be? To be balanced. Because when you touch someone that is in balance with it, it brings balance to them. So whatever the problem was, it's already solved. That's the actual, that's the secret within the wand. Now, obviously, the wand is us. You see the bird brain, and I'm still going to get to this masculine and feminine, but I am actually right in it. When you see the bird brain, you see the two wings on the side, right? So this is the orb. This is the ship, DVD, sometimes they call it. It's David, meaning the disc. It's the brain, the wheel, and Tron. It's your information, your biorhythmic connection, etc. All those wheels within wheels come in the orb of the mind. So you generally sit on a throne. You are androgynon. I think the alchemical term is rebus. They don't show the king as a male. They show the king as a male-female, right? And it's not actually king. It's Cain, Cain, Q-A-H-E-E-N, Cain. That's our word for queen. It's the queen of man. Do you even know? Wouldn't it be the ultimate kickoff for these kind of individuals who think sick as such is just to make everyone believe that the queen, who's a woman, is actually a man? See, if you understand their works and what they've written and who they're avowed to, like a man needs to know this because we are protectors. This is not a problem for us to handle when we know what we're doing. But when we're chasing our tail, literally, then it's going to become a situation. It's going to become a situation for all of us, but mainly our children. Because while man and woman are still in this argument, guess who's watching? The children. And they're learning from us, and they're feeling that energy. And that energy is getting them familiar with the communion that we have brought about. Because remember, I talked about, this glorious masculine male that has turned itself on and accomplished Golden Lotus, uniting with this pure feminine creation that has created, what do they call that, parthenogenesis within herself, and how glorious it would be, right? But then there's the world of incubus and succubus. There's also that world. It's when impure thoughts, such as lust, come as the key point to a person's connection with another person, it bursts still through its inception of an idea that came together, a child. And this child we be called sometimes evil spirits. Like this is when evil is darkness, where something hasn't learned. It doesn't know what it's even going through. It doesn't even know how it came into existence. Sounds like your story. Meaning it sounds like all of our stories sometimes. Why am I here? Who am I? Where do we come from? That kind of thing. Meaning that if there's generally where you can't go to your mother and get the arcana, which is the ark, that's the womb, right? The cube. Then there's been a severing from you and your mother. That's now bringing it another way around. So the return of the goddess, again, is really more about the goddess, which is really more the serpentine energy associated with Kundalini. It's just a play on words. All words are plays. The other thing is that it's supreme being, because you have to understand the Druidic tradition is very strong. They deal with might, not magic. It's of might or magic, right? So they're using might. So that means they might win. So what I'm saying is that you have to realize that there is a system that is already here that has been set up. It was a part of the treaty in a tense. It was the agreement after the war that we would take on the king and the queen, the lord and the lady. And then from that connection that we would attempt to try to emancipate ourselves out of the situation without letting them know we were doing it. Because the lord and the lady sought for no one else to become above them. That was the whole thing. That's the whole thing with God. God is jealous. Anytime you try to do something that seems to outdo God, then there's a problem. And it's because of the etymology behind the word. The etymology is connected to flesh and the consumers of flesh. So this is also why when they show the wheat, who was the goddess, if you want to know the truth, it was when, not the goddess, the word that is used for the goddess. Let me correct things here so you get the full insight. The word that was used for the goddess was signified by the grain. And the reason was because it was like a rope. It was like, look, we know you guys are getting into heavy carnivore. Getting into heavy karmic trouble down there will throw you something that's a little more lighter. It's grain, and you can sustain yourself on it. But you might want to get back to the fruits and vegetables first. Then once you go through that gate, you'll see before you the nobles. So get back on the elements, the colloidals, the monatomics in a sense, but not the ones they're high spinning on the internet. And then you got one more point to go. That's the air. You need pranic force to turn the air, purify the air so that you can actually cause the biological reaction that creates an activated human being within yourself through the pranic field, changing the air that you're breathing into something that can feed that vehicle. And oh my, then you realize you don't even need to breathe. And many people have been in this state. Some have been super high, however you want to look at that. And some have also been channeling or doing some of it. But finally, when they level out, they're like, man, am I breathing? Oh, my God, I wasn't breathing. How long did that last? And it's because you don't actually need to breathe. You only need to do at times what they keep suggesting to you in this dimension. And that's what's got to stop. Meaning that when we're taking the suggestions of what they're saying is real and not checking it for ourselves, this is basically like eating food that we're not growing. So you see how deep we're in? None of us really actually got involved.
It goes on and on.
It goes on and on.
Unfortunately, the show is not going to go on and on, so I do want to get to our callers.
Okay.
And if we could just ask the callers when I bring you online, if you could keep your question concise, and we'll try to get through. We got about 20 minutes left, so we're going to have 3 callers, so do the math. First of all, we are going to be talking to Ralph as soon as I get the mic open. Hello, Ralph. You are on the air with James Sevan.
Hello. I just feel like I got a PhD in just an hour in this information that I'm just I can't absorb hardly any of it, just trying to keep up with it. But even learn a new language, understand and stuff like that. It's really interesting. But I wanted to ask Sevan, well, I had some other questions, but I want to get to this last one because you just kind of took my mind away from everything else I was thinking about. One of the last things you said was about God being a jealous God. I didn't like the way that felt. Is that more like some things related to the religious beliefs where we're further separated from each other as opposed to seeing ourselves as one?
Okay, let me explain that very briefly. When we say God, we're talking about a specific being, and that's why when you go to other countries, they don't call God God. They either call God Allah, God Brahman, or something of that nature, because each word means something. So when I say God is a jealous God, I'm not saying the supreme being is a jealous being. So then when we keep going from there, what you'll notice is that it's in the statement, I am. That's the end of the riddle. I am is that when you completely separated from everything else, you say I am. Because now you've identified yourself as something separate. So do you see how one statement actually demarks who you are and what you are? So when they say, well, what is your name? I am that I am. But your fathers don't know me by this name. You see, I'm going to notice what the Bible says. I'm going to give you a name that your fathers did not know me by. Well, why didn't our fathers know you by that name? Because you weren't who our fathers were talking to. Any being that says, let there be light is not light. Or else why would it call upon it? So there's riddles here in the words, and that's why I can't omit to tell you and explain that to you. But I do also get the loose terms as when, like even sometimes I'll talk and I'll say God and I'll say goddess, and then I'll go back and I correct myself because that is the word branded in our minds for us to understand as being the supreme being. But you cannot limit the supreme being to words, especially 3 of them. you probably would at least try to get to one of them at least, and then none of them. But then you'll understand these are tones and vibrations that are used to evoke or intone specific energies that are fractured. That's why the Shemham Feresh, God split himself into 72 pieces, meaning that 72 pieces divided is not the whole thing. So unless you say all the words or you understand that all is self and you need to just throw this in the trash, then you end up with only a sliver of what the Supreme Being really is. And it also becomes very difficult for us to go through these kind of experiences, because instead of us sending our Kundalini up and then back into its position as ruler, we've sent it down into the netherworld to take upon a demigod, meaning that you're still dealing with a dimension that has been going on for billions of years at least. So there are other beings that know how to do what I'm telling you about here that you used to know how to do. And you still do automatically most of the time when you go to sleep or when you leave this world. The thing, though, is that some are drifting and their motors are shot. So what ends up happening is we come to rejuvenate so that way we can, expand from this. But I'm going to go into the words and let you know exactly what they mean so that there's no confusion, because there could be no confusion in me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That's very interesting. I've had to think about it for a while, but I want to get on, let some other folks get on. But thank you thank you. You've been awesome.
You're more than welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Ralph. Bye-bye. Well, next we are going to talk to Donna, and it's her birthday, and she is very familiar with your work, Sevan. So, Donna, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I have passed my second Saturn return, so those of you who know astrology have an idea of how old I am. This is my question, Sevan. Thank you for tonight, too. It was amazing.
You're more than welcome.
One of the things, I listen to you frequently. I listen to your works, and one of the things that I know that you speak on all the time is all is self. This has been a troublesome area for me in my journey. I would like, if you can, help me to understand that statement, especially when subjects like Saturn, aliens, which seems outside of self, are brought up. If you could give me some visualization or some way of getting me to click to that,
sure,
I would appreciate it.
It's very simple, and these questions are the best questions. Now, when you watch light shine into a prism, what you see is the prism then splits up into 7 colors, so it divides itself. So in the beginning was the word did not come back void, meaning that there's a word that creates worlds. And when it goes into a world, it separates itself into 7 spheres and then 2 hidden, which is white and black. White and black are colors too in that kind of spectrum. So you have 9. So then when I say all is self, I'm talking about the concepts of the unbegotten, meaning before you come in the prism. Because everything in the prism is polarized into its separatism. And that's what's keeping it here. That's what's holding it in a mirror or a crystal. Then when you escape this, when you actually say to yourself, but what is it about that I keep thinking about it if it doesn't exist? Meaning that who is the prime mover? Look up this term, prime mover. Well, the prime mover or the prime mobile is what they say is spinning the galaxy. And they sometimes, that's God. Or they always give it that role. Who's the prime mover? Us. We are the prime movers. So if we decide not to move into the control point and go into all itself rather than the 7 cards, see, it's this 7 system, which is how they calculate the septidecimal on the stock market, is trading us. You see what I mean? Like, look at what we're dealing with here. That's why the knowledge is deep insight, because if the trading is taking place with this birth certificate and these different certifications that we've agreed to, we've pledged allegiance to, then we become in this system that has set itself up on division. That's why the God is deuce, right? Divided worlds have uses. This is what we need to understand, and it's understood with our growth. Because then you can look back and say, oh, it took me all that to learn this. And it's over. It's collapsed. And it tends to, you actually brought all of what you've been through into a solid point. It is no longer flying everywhere and flying over everyone. And then when you have it now back in your grasp, that's what you implode with. So until then, there'll be anchors, meaning that we'll lodge ourselves in with Illuminatis and different kind of art forms with different symbols that make us mad or make us happy. And still realizing that you have to make yourself happy. So what is it saying? You have to make the world the way that you want it to be. First, want to start with a dream. Obviously, you have to work on the body. But in the dream, when the dream begins to run parallel to the reality, then at a certain point, you can walk into the dream, or you can see the tomorrow or the next day or a few more days in the dream. This then becomes what happens to you when you supposedly die or divide. You divide, meaning the soul is supposed to leave the body, but it actually doesn't happen. They agree to stay together. The body transforms, so you take the memories with you. You leave with the chrysalis. Chrysalis has so much uses on the galactic plane, astral plane, it's like you just received a medal, a badge of honor. Because it contains all the geometry of stuff that happened here on the world. Now, remember, this is a map. And I want to make sure that you understand this, that what happens here is that we have to navigate through our own consciousness, utilizing these rudimentary building blocks of how things got started. And you see then the ones I sometimes say the ones we don't speak of, but the ones that are causing the negativity as children. You see them in their primordial state. That's why it's primordial gods. They're beyond thinking. What happens is that some people, if they want to understand what these individuals really feel about it, some people are doing things on the internet trying to say they want to be the Illuminati and get on their team, etc. It's like when you walk down the sidewalk and you're not conscious of an ant. You don't even think about it. That's where their consciousness is, in this vacuum called the womb. So then you understand, Ma. See, Mom, either way, it didn't matter if Yalda Baal was going to do anything. If the God ever came to the world and said he was supreme, he forgot to realize he was still in the world. And understand, what are you inside of? And that then would be the supreme being. And so this is where we return to. We leave the spectrum, we leave the pyramid, we leave the tetragrammaton, the 26 keys. Then the ones that are missing, the other 26 underneath it. We leave the arc forms and we bud something new because we've taken on that and then even grown from it. See, some people are trying to figure out what is deprogramming. Deprogramming is not just erasing everything. Hello? We're trying to salvage certain things here. There's great worth in what we've discovered and learned. So to really, to harbor, to bring a ship in a harbor, you must connect to the organic grid, meaning that where'd you keep your ship? Where is it? And then, so this is what you'll also see then. It's seeing things in a higher light, in a tense. It's really ethereal. It's beyond light. Okay? So when you see something then in its higher light, then you don't see it as it is right now. You see it as a child. It's a child. Yalda Baal, you're a child. And that's why most of these New Age books do begin, the deeper ones, they explain to you that the entity that is causing the most chaos is actually a child. Because it's still in this immature stage of not realizing that all is self. Are we talking about ourselves? See, the funny part about it is that every chakra that I went through, there was a different opponent. But when I started learning I was staring in the face of a mirror, it wasn't so fearsome after that. And then I realized that this is your biorhythm. This is your inheritance. Do not walk out on your inheritance. Do not abort. And that's the key in the message. Do not give away your memories. That is your currency. In all of this of what you're seeing here, sometimes people, it's too much for them to comprehend. But you don't have to anymore. This is really simple. Clean your filters. The forces and the powers and the honors and all of that have arrived already, but they are subtle. So what happens is that we keep seeing them in their lesser light because we keep looking at them. You see what I mean? Like when we look at what is your identity of the real king? What is your identity of the real queen? And are you seeing that? Or are you seeing them over in London on the island Atlantis, playing around, jumping through portals, in the tunnels of Set, what they learned from the pyramids? This is the other thing, because, there's a message to every color, race, and creed. But, I'm still African American. So to my people, I say, if you want to say that you're God or a supreme being, then you also have to take the responsibility of what happened. And then you'll watch them walk away. Well, what do you mean what happened? We did everything right. Come on. That's not how the universe ever worked. The universe gives you what you put in. Now, guess what, though? The universe, when it pays or when it reaps, it takes what you have and does it with it. It doesn't have interest. Look, God is a banker. Think about what I'm saying. But the universe doesn't have interest. It takes what you have and it divides it. It's almost like you seeing a cookie cutter with 12 slices on it, and it just stamps over what you call currency or whatever you got left. And then it divides it, and it takes its portion and divides it amongst the children and keeps moving to the next being. You see? So while we're in this, because like I said, today is a magnificent day. I actually got a chance to be able to give the information in a concise way that I feel like that if individuals really tune into what I'm saying, then they'll get the keys to everything and they'll know what to do. And this will subsequently cause a chain reaction of the lightning of the organic grid, which is actually a system that can repair many of the individuals, meaning to put their two sides back together, that need much more deeper. They need dream time. Meaning that the ones that work with them through the dreams, because you can learn aeons worth of knowledge within what you will call 4 humans years. That's why I say, a day on this world is 1,000 years to God. And I want to tell that brother that called earlier, the thing about it is that the title still God, if you have been made to be below it, is higher than you. So Saturnalian principle is that as base pillar, if they can debase you, meaning make you less than them, think like them, then they can stand on top of you as long as they choose not to think about you. This is alchemy, the evil side of it.
We still have a couple of callers, so I think you made your point.
Okay.
And want to Donna, wish you a happy birthday and thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you, Donna.
I wish I had time for another question, but thank you for listening.
Yeah, we have
you, Sevan.
For waiting. Thank you so
I
much.
understand. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Woo, we may have to take it 15 minutes
okay,
over.
So, we've got 5 minutes left, so keep that in mind. We are going to talk to our friend Joseph. Hello, sweetie. How are you?
Hello, my dear. I'm very well. And hello, my brother James. What a brilliant and glorious exposition you have given us today. Lots of food for thought.
Thank you, Joseph.
I want to share, you and I have a love of words. It's very obvious. In studying the Gnostic Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I ran across a word that I did not know. It was a Greek word. And when Peter said to Yeshua, "Why do you spend so much time with this woman? You know women cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." Well, that pushed a button. And then when Yeshua responded to him, he said, "I have made her an anthropos." And it's mistranslated in most Bibles as, "I have made her a man." But that's not the word.
Right.
The word is a fully evolved human being, totally male and totally female in the same body.
Right.
You're speaking to one of those right now, and that was quite a revelation for me. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to share that term with you. I know there are others waiting to talk, but I feel truly expanded by your sharing with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. The Gnostic name is Achimoth, but that is the actual Dakini name, courtesy of John Lamb Lash, of the incarnate androgynon.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well,
Thank you, Joseph, so much for calling.
you're very welcome, darling.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Okay. Well, we're one last caller, and I'm so happy that we got through. This is Kista, and you are on the air, sweetie.
Hi everyone. It's Kista Power. Hi Sevan. Hi Lavender and everybody. I wanted to ask you about hospitals. I was there today, and as they were drawing the blood and wanting different specimens and urine and things that he's just going through these repetitive motions, and it's just I just sick of going to hospitals. What's your take on them? Like, what do they really do with the blood and urine and stool and things that they're requesting? I hope I'm not roasting anyone.
Keep in mind, Sevan, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll make it really briefly.
Okay.
Obviously, a hospitaler is a Templar, and so obviously there's no curing going on in the hospital. That's why even the people who wear the caudacious staff don't even really know what it means. So when you're practicing, you're not really doing the real thing. And hospitals, in a sense, coalesce a great deal of pain and negative energy. And generally, because it's always connected to the Jesuit system, you always get more or less a siphoning of that kind of negative energy just within the pain and things that people have been through while they've been there. I also want to tell people if they want to tune into more of this, they can go to astroquest.com, because I know we're getting into the last couple minutes of the show. But also I always tell the sister, definitely look into the holistic approach at working with the body and really understand the body, because that's the other thing. We don't really understand the body. We don't do enough study in it. And there's enough on the internet now for you to get right to what is really going on with it and how to repair it, especially from hereditary situations. So that's as much as I'll say on that. But obviously, hospitals are designed to do what they do, which is to degenerate and to charge and to butcher and to kill, whether it's just small organisms in your body or it's you. So we have to work with another system.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks so much for.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Well, Sevan, the time has just flown by, which is the mark of a good guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your presence on the planet in the first place, and thank you for joining us this evening. And I would encourage everyone to visit your website, astralquest.com. And also you've got an online community, I think, at resistance2010.com. So you can all explore more of James Evans Bomar III's work on this planet. That's a big mouthful.
Yeah.
So I just thank you so much, and we hope to talk to you again sometime.
You will. And definitely thank you. I just want to say thanks to your audience for also listening, absorbing the information. And obviously it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm in service of Earth. And, it just takes a little bit of time to look through everything. But once you do, you realize that actually this is the glass half full, meaning that there's a lot more to come that is magnificent for us. Understand, we have a date. We have a date with activation. It's not something that can be escaped. Earth's Kundalini will rise first, waking all subsequent beings. And that's all I have to say.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, good night. Thank you. And we will be back next week. Bye-bye.